On the second page, we're going to write some equations, and eventually we'll take a look at maybe even solving some equations. So Kira is a lawyer. She charges $250 for an initial meeting, and then $150 per hour for any work required after the meeting. This is a very common sort of pay structure for a lawyer. You have to pay them a certain amount for the just meeting with them, and then they make a certain amount per hour. And they make typically a lot of money per hour. So let H stand for hours and E stand for money earned. Write an equation that represents this situation. In other words, represent the amount of money earned. So we're trying to figure out, okay, how much does Kira earn? We know that she earns $250 for an initial meeting, and then an additional amount per hour. Remember, H stands for hours, so if we were going to add on 150 per hour, remember that word per really means times the number of hours. So 150 times H. So 250 plus 150 times H. So if she worked like 2 hours, 150 times 2 would be 300. So 300 would get added on to that initial meeting cost, and so on and so forth. Right. DeMarco is another lawyer. He charges $150 for the initial meeting and then $175 per hour for any other work required. All right, so let's just kind of underline the key parts here. H stands for hours, E stands for money earned. And once again, we're trying to figure out an equation for the amount of money earned. Same sort of process. His original amount is a little bit lower, $150 for the initial meeting. And then he adds on $175 per hour, which is a little bit more. So 150 plus 175 times H equals E. All right, if 3 hours of work was required, which is the better option? What if 5 hours of work is required? Well, let's take a look at that. So if 3 hours of work is required, let's do Kira's equation for 3 hours of work. So remember, her equation is 250 plus 150 times H. And now we know that it's 3 hours. So 250 plus 150 times 3 equals the amount of money earned. So that's going to be E. So let's punch that in to the calculator. 250 plus 150. If you want to use parentheses, kind of like what we did there. Oops, I guess that didn't work. 150. I guess I won't do that. 150 times 3. All right, so 250 plus 150 times 3 is equal to 700. So that's how much money that Kira earned after 3 hours. All right, let's go ahead and do DeMarco for that same amount of time. So his was 150 for the initial meeting plus 175 per hour for 3 hours. And let's see how much money he earned. 150 plus 175 times 3 is equal to 675. So he earned a little bit less for 3 hours, but pretty close actually. Let's do the same thing for 5 hours. So for 5 hours, Kira, again, her equation is 250 plus 150 times H. In this case, hours is 5. And then that's going to equal, again, the total amount of money earned for her in 5 hours. So 250 plus 150 times 5 equals $1,000. Okay. DeMarco had 150 plus 175 times the number of hours, and so we'll put 5 in for him. 150 plus 175 times 3 equals, let's try that again. He had 5 hours, still on the last one. 150 plus 175 times 5 equals 1,025. So this time, he's earned a little bit more for 5 hours. All right. So let's say, to answer our question here, which is the better option. So for 3 hours, Kira earned more than DeMarco, $700 versus $675. And then we can say for 5 hours, DeMarco earned a little more. 1,025 versus 1,000. Running out of space there, but let's answer that question. All right, and then the final part here is if you know that they earn $1,900, solve the equation to show how many hours each one of them worked. Okay, so this time we know the amount of money earned. So we know that E at the end of the equation. So for Kira, remember her equation was 250 plus 150 times H equals the amount of money earned. But now we know that the amount of money earned is $1,900. All right, so let's find out how many hours that represents. So now we have to go through our solving steps like we did in the first page. Remember, usually the first step in a two-step equation is to undo any addition or subtraction. And we're going to undo the number that is on the same side of the equation as the H, working our way back to the H. So we will undo that 250. It's a positive by subtracting 250 from both sides. That leaves us with 150H equals 1,900 minus 250 will be 1,650. All right, and then that's 150 times H. So to undo multiplication, we will divide both sides by that number. 150 divided by 150 is 1, or 1H. 1,650 divided by 150 is 11. Actually, I did my calculator over on the side here. 11 hours. Could have brought up the iPad calculator, but I didn't. All right. And then let's do that same thing for DeMarco. So he also made $1,900, but how many hours did he have to work for that? So his equation was 150 plus 175H equals the amount of money earned. And again, we're going to go with that $1,900 and see how many hours that means for DeMarco. So we'll start off by undoing by subtracting. So subtract 150 from both sides. Bring down what's left. 175H is equal to, let's see, that would be 1,750. I could do this one in our head. All right, let's undo the multiplication by dividing both sides by 175. 175 divided by 175 is 1, so 1H. And 1,750 divided by 175, I know, is 10 hours. So given the pay structure, they both earned $1,900, but DeMarco, with his pay structure, only had to work 10 hours for that money versus Kira, who had to work 11 hours for that money.